Bit of snow here, huh? Back in the old home turf. Actually, a timbered hilltop back there in the sun, that's one of my favorite go-to hunting spots. It takes a while to get up there. It's pretty cool up there. Grabbed a couple trail cameras today, that's pretty cool. Some huge bucks on them. Anyways, I'm going to stop here for a little bit. And there's an email here, it's marked as read, and I believe I read it, but there's photographs with it, and I don't recall sharing these photographs anywhere. So I might have screwed up and not put this in a video, and I'm not going to go back right now and look over the videos. I don't have time, but I'm going to read this and share these. Make sure I share these photographs. All right. Hello, Steve. My name is Lou. You can use my name if you like. I live in southern New Jersey. I've been watching your channel for quite some time now. I want to start by saying I think you're doing a real great job. We really need people like you getting the truth about this subject out there. I'm 50 years old, and I've been fascinated by the subject since I was a kid. Back then in the 70s, Bigfoot was a big deal. You could find TV shows about it, documentaries about it, and it seemed to be more accepted. We were always told that it was a Pacific Northwest phenomenon, didn't think too much about it being anywhere else, except maybe the Yeti in Tibet. However, I got thinking about it, and since it seems like these things lived in rural forested areas and mountains to the north, I figured, why would they be limited to just the west part of North America and not the east part as well? So, fast forward to '83. I'm on a school trip to a camp in eastern Pennsylvania mountains. We were all staying in various cabins in a wooded area, and I could not shake the feeling when looking at the wood line across the field from our cabin that Bigfoot could be out there. It was just that feeling of knowing that you can't quite explain. Well, one of the activities I signed up for was a night hike. We set out on a hike with, I'd say, about 30 of us, including a couple teachers and camp guide who led us on a hike without flashlights or lights of any kind. It was approximately about 1 mile hike, give or take, through the woods, across the road, and then down a long hill to a lakeside beach. After we crossed a road and got into some thick woods, we were on a trail. The woods were thick and impassable. My friend and I began noticing what sounded like a group of people paralleling us in the woods, which after reflection, some 30 years later, I realized was impossible for people, that is. We also heard what sounded like chatter, indiscernible words, which we took for conversation between the people that were paralleling us. Needless to say, this made us nervous, but we were with a group and figured there was no danger. Upon reaching our destination, which was, as I said earlier, a sandy beach along a small lake, we were all told to just sit, relax for a few minutes, rest up before we headed back. We were also told to enjoy the stillness of the night air and to listen to the sounds of the night and enjoy the stars above. It was a crisp, cool night, stars were bright, and I remember the moon being a quarter phase. As my friend and I were standing there just looking up at the stars and hanging out, all of a sudden we heard what seemed like a surreal sound of a howling scream coming from the top of the hill we just came down from. We looked at each other. My friend said, "Did you hear that?" I said, "Yeah, of course I did." I said, "What do you think that was?" He said, "A bear." I remember thinking to myself, that doesn't sound like a bear, and it didn't make sense. Fast forward 35 years later, I'm watching Finding Bigfoot on TV, and the Bigfoot roar they show when the show comes back on from commercials sounded almost exactly like what I heard that night. It made me realize that I was in denial about what happened that night all these years. Let me continue the story. So as we gathered together to head back, I went to the head of the line with the camp guide leading the way. As we started back on the trail in the tree line, I began to tell the camp guide what we heard down at the lake. I began to say, "Hey, I thought we heard." All of a sudden, the tree in front of us began shaking violently, and something was growling at us from behind it. This tree was a pine tree with a trunk at least 12 inches in diameter. No human could have moved it like that. The camp guide immediately stopped and put out his arm to stop me. He looked towards the tree with extreme caution on his face. I tried to go around him to look behind the tree, but he blocked me, which in hindsight was probably a good thing. And then it stopped. We all just stood there for a moment, not knowing what to do. Then the camp guide said, "Let's go." I thought, so we're going to just walk past this thing like nothing happened? The tree partially blocked the trail, so it was a bit scary walking past it. I swallowed my fear and went forward. Everyone began cursing at whatever it was, including me. It made us feel better. Looking back, I think it's a funny bunch of 12-year-olds yelling and cursing at Bigfoot but not knowing it. LOL. As we were walking, I immediately asked the camp guide, "So what the heck just happened? What was that?" He did not answer me. I asked again, and he just ignored me. I sensed that he had no answer and was in denial over it himself. I was like, what the F? It was like ignoring an elephant in the living room. So as we're walking back to camp, my friends and I were talking, and our minds were trying to come up with conventional explanations for what happened. We decided that it must have been a practical joke perpetuated by one of our shop teachers. So upon returning to camp, we immediately sought out information about his whereabouts. To our amazement, we found him in the rec hall, with a room full of kids and staff in the middle of another activity, and had been there the whole time. At that point, we all pretty much shut up about it, not knowing what to think. That night always stayed with me in the back of my mind. Deep down, I knew the truth, that we encountered a pack of Sasquatch that night, but it's funny how the mind works. Years later, as I learned more about their behavior and listening to other people's accounts, it began to add up. The paralleling, the voice chatter, the tree shaking, the howling, all things that others have experienced. I became more and more interested in the subject after coming to terms with my childhood experience. I began looking for signs of them while walking in the woods. I was walking down a trail by a lake with my wife a few years back, and as I was looking at the ground, I saw what looked like a track. I kept walking, then I told my wife to hold up a second, turned back to look at it again. Sure enough, it was a human-looking track about 15 inches long by about 5 to 6 inches wide. You could clearly see toes also. That confirmed it for me that they are here in South Jersey also. Then about 3 years ago, I was walking along a beach near my house that is along a large saltwater bay. I looked over to a small wooded area. To my astonishment, it was a large teepee structure. This thing was huge and was like, say, hidden in plain sight. People walk by this thing every day as a popular fishing spot. It is at the end of the beach. No one pays any mind, though, it seems. Also, there are condos less than 100 yards away. These things must know that people, as a rule, don't pay attention to this stuff, or they know somehow that people are in denial to their existence for them to be so ballsy about it. I've heard others talk about finding structures in the brush next to playgrounds less than 10 yards from a baseball diamond. The teepee I found was mysteriously demolished when I went back to see it about 6 months later, only to find that another one had been built adjacent to where the original was, apparently utilizing some of the same material. I have photographs of the new one on my current phone. However, I do not have the original on this phone. It is on my old phone. I'll have to try and upload them at some point. I will send you pictures of the current structure. I also found another smaller structure a few yards away from this one. Now that I know what to look for, it is amazing how I can spot their handiwork anywhere. Also in this area are a lot of trails that lead back into the woods, and I'm telling you now, that every single one of them, without exception, when driving by and looking down the path, there is always a tree dragged across the path to block access. This cannot be coincidence. After the township has erected barricades, in front of some of these paths, also, which I find suspicious. Fast forward to 2 years ago. I'm out on my boat, passing through an inlet which has wildlife refugees on either side. I'm looking over to one side and I see what looks suspiciously like a smaller version of the structure I mentioned earlier. I tried to ignore it, but it kept bothering me. I said to myself, yeah, that has to be one of them. However, what perplexed me was the fact that in order to get to where this is, you would require either swimming across an extremely strong current near the ocean or walking down a heavily populated street for about 15 miles, which is obviously out of the question. Then there's the third option, which I now know is how they get around. They teleport to their locations. These beings are not simply flesh and blood, but are what I believe to be fallen angel genetic hybrids of some type as mentioned in the Bible. That's the only thing that makes sense. Just like angels can exist in both the spirit world and our realm, what we call the physical. They seem to have the ability to do both as well. I've personally seen tracks in the sand near the structure that I found that began in the middle of the sand as if they just appeared there suddenly. There was no trail behind it and in front of those same tracks. I found deer tracks. I believe what I saw was evidence of an ambush. The creature being invisible appears behind the deer and grabs them. The deer tracks also seemed to disappear at that point. Anyway, back to the structure on the beach. So I'd always see it as I drive past on the boat. So a year ago, I took my son out for a boat ride. We went past that point, and I want to show him what I found there. We stopped offshore for a moment to look, and as we were sitting there, we noticed this smell of sulfur mixed with a foul stench. It was like nothing I had ever smelled around there before. The closest thing I would say would be the smell of sulfur from real black powder burning or rotten eggs. Right then, I knew what was going on. But just to be sure, I noted the direction of the wind, and I swung the boat around the other side of the island to be sure that it wasn't coming from somewhere else. As soon as we cleared the island and the wind was coming across the bay behind the island, there was no smell. We went back in front of the island, and sure enough, the smell was there. The source was certainly coming from the island. Knowing that something was there, but could not see it. On an open beach, there were some sand dunes, but not enough to hide behind. Something told me that if my theory about them is correct, then as a Christian and believer in Christ, I know what my authority is over such things, so I decided to invoke it. I yelled out, "Show yourself." And I said it with strong conviction and authority. No sooner than I said that, I looked to my right, and there it was, about 150 yards away, standing, this tall black being walking along the beach as if it was there the whole time. I almost couldn't believe my eyes. My son whipped out a cell phone and started filming, so we got a little bit of footage of it. I yelled at it, "Hey!" LOL. It did not seem to acknowledge us. I know it heard me, though. We were drifting in the boat as we were in a current. So as we drifted sideways, it walked behind one of the dunes, and then I then immediately swung the boat around and punched it to get back into position to see it. It disappeared. There's no way it could just vanish unless it did just vanish. In other words, there was nowhere for it to hide. It was simply gone. From that vantage point, it should have been right there, still walking in the direction it was. It was then that I realized that there really is nowhere safe from them. This world would explain why people have encounters with them, drive home 50 miles away, and that night get harassed at their house because they didn't walk 50 miles. They somehow know where you are. It's a spiritual thing, and they come to you. There's more I can tell you about this. However, I don't want this email to run too long, so I'll end it here. Keep up the good work. I hope these stories will help somebody else, as some of the stories you have told helped me. God bless Lou. Lou, appreciate it, man. And in case you guys, I screw up again, I will do this. So I think that would record, didn't it? What do we got? Nah, I don't think the lighting's too good. I'm getting reflections all over the place, but you never know. There's the structure, and there is the picture, I guess taken from video. Damn reflections. Hopefully I remember to load this up by the time I get home and video. But thanks for that, Lou. And you know what? A lot of people say if you want to hear more, I got more. Share it, man. We want to hear it all. Basically, everybody comes here wants to hear it all. That's what they're here for. They want to hear everybody's experiences so they can get better at putting their puzzle together, right? And the vanishing thing, do I believe that these beings can vanish? Yes, I do. Because there have been far too many very credible people who have shared that they witnessed the exact same thing. And you know what? And the one that really stands out for me is Edgar. When Edgar shared he was really troubled about that experience, man. When he's seen that thing jumping up and down and starting to become transparent from the bottom up. And that's when Edgar lost time, and then his cell phone had dozens of texts from different countries around the world welcoming him back into their airspace. You know, the text you get when you fly home or leave home. But that is one of the main ones that really had a little bit of an impact on my puzzle. And it's a little unsettling for what we typically accept as normal and real in our existence, right? Which is silly how so many humans put limits on basically everything. But anyway, share more, Lou. You got more. And if you think it's going to help somebody, share it, all right? Appreciate it. Pretty sure I read that one, but I didn't share those photos, so if I just doubled down, oh well. Alright. This one's a bit of a different title. Don't pee on trees. Steve, you stated in a recent posting that you feel something is going on. You phrased this partly as a statement and partly as a question. I'd like to give you some info that we have been given. Excuse me. First, a quick background about us. There are 4 of us. All have experienced Mindspeak. One has a very strong connection to them. One has a really good connection, and the other 2 are, let's say, we are developing this skill set. Back to your question. For some time now, we've been getting warnings like, when it comes, be ready. We asked if they mean be ready spiritually, and the answer was yes. Excuse me. It is freaking cold, man. It's like, I don't know, -12 or something right now. About 3 months ago, while communicating with them, we got a new message. It was, 3 are coming, 2 are on the way. We're not able to understand this. We thought it meant others were coming to visit us that night. This was an unsolved riddle to us. The last trip out, Kevin, the guy with the strong Mindspeak, and myself, Mindspeak beginner, were trying to ask general questions. Understand that just because you ask a question does not mean they will answer it. We asking standard questions like, will they tell us their name or how many are here tonight? Or other questions like, does the blood moon have any importance to their people? Side note, to date we have a little over 50 names given to us. Mostly all with Arizona, but a few from outside the state. It's pretty awesome when you know a name and then meet them again. Anyway, excuse me. This last trip during the Blood Moon camping trip, Kevin got this riddle told to him again. 3 are coming, 2 are on their way. Honestly, I wasn't too excited to hear this again, because we did not know what it meant the first time, and I did not want to thinking about it again. You know, repeating the same event and expecting a different result. After I said out loud, we did not know what they meant. Could they help us understand who they were referring to? I was not expecting any info and was ready to move on. As I thought that in my head, I had a thought pop into my head rather clearly. I will not say sarcastically, but rather like someone trying to explain something simple for the 20th time to a slow person. The thought was not about someone. At that point, I realized 3 things. 1, that their speech or communication flow does not follow how we humans speak. Secondly, we totally missed understanding this message. Third, to them, I must not seem like the sharpest tool in the shed. LOL. Anyway, I said out loud, so this is an event, not a person? Bam, I was hit with a confirmation. Let me stop here and explain what I meant by confirmation and give a little background of what we believe they are allowed and not allowed to do. We believe that they have rules or laws they have to abide by. We believe there are things they can't do or can't tell us, at least tell us directly. We believe that they can give us hints to figure out things, cheat or skirt around the rules. Now about confirmations. Those with good Mindspeak will hear a clear yes inside their head. For us Mindspeak beginners, they have to find other ways to let us know. For instance, if I'm talking to someone explaining something as we understand it, and they hear this and agree, or like what I said, they might let the speaker know this statement is true. I've gotten confirmations after speaking about various topics. The way I get acknowledgement is that the back of my head tingles, sometimes strong, sometimes weak. Some refer to this tingle as being zapped. I found out that if I say something they agree with, or I want to confirm to me, they'll sometimes let me know in this way. Okay, now back to the story. Once we realized we were way off on our riddle, we started brainstorming out loud to each other. We were on a quest to finally figure this out. We were trying to figure out what was the first event. Man, I got reflections all over the screen. We were trying to figure out what the first event could have been. The biblical flood, the Black Plague, maybe World War I or World War II. I guess we were thinking too far in the past. Then COVID popped into mind. Actually, the thought was more like a question. What about COVID? So I said, COVID, out loud. Bam, another confirmation hit me. We agreed that this seemed to fit, and then I got the, now you're getting it. Take this for what it's worth. We believe something is coming, and some of our forest friends are trying to give us a warning about this event. We're currently trying to figure out what the two that are coming could possibly be. None of the options we came with are pleasant, that's for sure. If it may burn up a little more of your time, all four of us listen to your channel. If one of your readers' experiences overlay heavily with one of our experiences or something really stands out as spot on, we might text the others to check that posting out. Sometimes we bring it up during our camping trips. You do share a lot of experiences, and there's much to learn from your listeners and about these people of the forest. Your channel provides an excellent source that otherwise would not be available. Obviously, how to hunt does come up from time to time when we're out camping. We all take notice when you get a letter from the Owl Man. Let's just say that all of us would love to talk to him. This person is definitely spot on. If you ever wanted to provide something over the top for your viewers to watch, consider having some guests online that have knowledge and experience that he has on this topic. Have it in an open format that would allow your guests to freely exchange experiences and ideas with each other. Of course, you could hit them up with questions. Trust me, if the guests are experienced, their knowledge and experiences will not need any help keeping the conversation rolling. I'm sure this exchange of experiences and information would leave most open-minded viewers in awe, some in disbelief. With your number of subscribers, there is no way you'd be able to capture a fraction of the questions being asked during this event, especially if you gave ample advanced warning about this show. I would not mix people with opposite views, meaning you don't want someone that thinks this race of beings is bad or evil with someone that has had positive experiences with them. Just my 2 cents from the back of the bus is I've seen open forums that have had opposite beliefs. It just doesn't work. The information flow is greatly reduced, and it just makes the event not very enjoyable for everyone, especially your guests. I've seen shows with those of the same belief. Those shows are excellent and very informative. Well, my friend, I have to close somewhere. It's a good place to stop. There is so much more. I will close with a bravo Zulu to you and your channel and to those that send in their experiences, whether good or bad. By the way, if Owlman ever wanted to contact us, please give him my info. There are some folks in Arizona that would love to chat with him. Sincerely, Rob. P.S. Humor. Almost from the very beginning of our adventure, we are told, don't pee on trees. We don't know if they are screwing with us or if they are serious. We know they do have a sense of humor, but we believe this to be an honest request from them. So naturally, we honor this request. If it is Sasquatch humor, they got us. LOL. One can take this or leave it. I'm just passing it on. All right. Maybe that's why they kill dogs. But that's that's a very interesting email. And could you share some more with us, all four of you, and maybe fill us in a little more history about you and how you got into the Mindspeak thing, what triggered you to go look into it, and who was the first one of your group that realized they could do this or seek it out and get better at it. That's very, very, very interesting, right? And yeah, well, I'm sure if I remember it, once I get back home, I'll see if I can hook you guys up with the Owl Man. But then again, I think I probably want to hear you guys talking to each other too, right? We don't want to have you guys swapping all that juicy experiences without us hearing it. And then, but that is the original plan, is once I get the frickin' man cave done, which has been put on a little bit of a back burner since we had that electrical problem and I've been away. Once I get the electricians there this morning, I think. But once I get all that sorted out, then I'll go back, finish the barn, go in the man cave, get that going up, get the cameras, and I get a couple of tech geeks in there to set the whole place up, and then we're going to let her rip. And people are going to talk, and in real time. It'll be very, very interesting. Anyway, I'm about froze. I gotta go. Load up my trailer with hay and all sorts of other shit, and get ready to start my journey back home again tomorrow. So I'll be back. Talk to you guys shortly.